Hi there and welcome to Good Enough Scenery, and it is part 5 of how I made this modular board, and this is all about bringing it to life. So all the flock and the stones and the rocks and stuff that you see is all about this. So none of it is particularly difficult. It will require a little bit of patience at times, but yeah, you can get a board that looks just like this by following the following steps. So if you have been following along, then you will know that we're at this point here where we've got all of these parts, and step 1 was just to base coat this. So everywhere apart from the kind of rocky river edges was just painted with a combination of burnt umber and black to make a kind of nice dark brown chocolatey colour, which dried and then looked like you're seeing there. Now for the riverbeds and for the cliff edges, I chose a nice light grey. I mean, they're grey already, but I just wanted to have a nice consistent grey across all of it. So all of the surfaces that were kind of rocky or jaggedy or whatever, and all of the river edges I painted with a light grey. This is just cheap acrylic paint, and all you have to do is just to be careful that you don't particularly get it onto the brown bit, but it doesn't matter too much if you do, because you're going to be putting flock over that bit anyway. So yeah, this is all just nice and simple. So after this, we're going to move on to actually making the scatter rocks. Now for the scatter rocks, I just find bits of foam that are offcuts, and I tend to just work with whatever that has given me. So I tend to just shave the kind of 90-degree angles off, and just, you know, always cutting away from myself. I get told off for extending these blades more than 2 inches, but I'm not using a lot of force. It's kind of just shaving off the edges of foam, which is very easy to cut, and if it gets too difficult, then stop cutting with that. Once you've cut it to whatever angles you want, then just roll it with the tin foil foam that we've done the rest of it with, and I've got a more of a close-up of me kind of cutting into a rock. So not a lot of force needed, and just, you know, working with whatever you're given and just going over all of the surfaces with this tinfoil roll, which gives it a nice random rocky indentation. And now I made a whole bunch of these. Now part of these are for the riverbed, and some of these are for just general kind of scatter, but this is what they end up looking like, and it doesn't take very long to make quite a lot of them. So that is that. On to part 3, which is the riverbeds. So I took these rocks and then I'm just gluing them down with a glue gun. So some of them have gone onto the riverbed surface, and some of them have gone on the edges. Now for the riverbeds themselves, next step is to use just some cheap PVA glue and just cover the entirety of it. Now the thing about this is they don't have to stick that well, because they're not gonna float this. The sand and the rocks aren't gonna float when you put the resin in anyway, but it's kind of nice if it's kind of held a bit in place so that you know where it's all gonna be. But yeah, quite simply, just these are just rocks and bits of sand and stuff that I just scattered on there randomly, and just kind of filled it up, but leaving some space so that you can still see the grey beneath, so there's a hint of some depth. Now into part 4, which is all about flocking, so using just PVA paint, PVA glue again, going over the entirety of the board. So I started by going over the 9 tiles which do not have river things, and this is some scatter called Spring Mixture from Jarvis. I'll try and put a link in the description below. And just went over the entirety of the board apart from the kind of hillier areas. For the hillier areas, I used a slightly different glue. This is strong PVA. It's almost a bit like wood glue, but I was going to be putting static grass down in order to make sure that it's stuck nice and strongly very quickly. So what I did is I went through one tile at a time, or just a couple of tiles at a time, because the glue dries a lot quicker than PVA. So I think it dries within 5 minutes. Now I've got a fairly cheap static grass applicator. It's not amazing, but it does the job. And so I've got a mixture of a few different flock types, and yeah, just shaking it, making sure it's earthed, and then shaking it so that the strands fall out vertically, and then you get this nice texture to your tiles, so they actually feel like they've got a bit of depth to them, a bit of life to them. and end up looking a little something like that. Now, at the moment, I wasn't particularly pleased with how it looked, but I didn't expect to be, because it just felt like the bright green on the flat and the dark green on the hills just felt like two completely different worlds. So I was thinking about how to make this flow from one to the other a lot more fluidly. And so I was thinking about this as I was tapping it all off. So once I'd done that, I gave it a good coat with some matte scenic spray, and then from a height I've sprinkled some dark fine turf, and I think you can see that just very quickly it all starts to blend into one piece that looks like it should all be together. So I went across just sprinkling randomly from a height, and that color that kind of is a mid between the two maybe just makes it all feel like it's a bit more connected. Then I went back over it with some more glue, and then some static grass as well. And then that is when it all started to feel like it was tied together properly, because it had all of the colours across all of the different tiles, so it felt like one big thing. These are what the riverbeds looked like once they were all done. I did the riverbeds separately because they require a certain level of accuracy. Now, the way that I do these is I rip a bit of cardboard off a completely random angle, and this creates all sorts of different shapes on the cardboard, which means that you can flock. I'll do this by hand just for a little bit more accuracy, but you can use the different angles that you've got on the cardboard to stop the flock falling into the river. Let's be honest, if it falls into the river, it's not the end of the world. You're probably not going to see it once the resin's down there, and you can brush it out. It's just a bit of a pain if you do. So here I'm just using one of the angles of the cardboard here, which just randomly happened to match up with the curve of the river, which means I can just drop the flock on there and catch the stuff that does want to be there and miss the other stuff. So I went across all of that, and then we went and get to the dry brushing stage. And this is kind of a very heavy dry brush, but I'm just putting some white paint down, loading up a makeup brush, taking off most of the excess, and then just going perpendicular to all of the rocky surfaces. So this is all of the little rocks that are in the river. This is all of the cliff faces, and it just starts to bring the whole thing to life a little bit more, because when you're dry brushing, the paint hits the higher edges, kind of highlighting them and leaving the lower edges the darker colour. And this is what it ended up looking like. So please subscribe, hit the notification bell. We've got one part left to go, which is doing the resin pour for the river. So if you're interested in that, then please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when the next video is here. And yeah, if you're interested in making scenery, then that is what my channel is all about. It's called Good Enough Scenery because I feel like all of it is just it's good enough. You know, you stop at any point, you feel like, you know what, that's good enough for me. I've got all sorts of different tutorials across the channel, so please check out my other videos as well. If you like this, then hit the like button. If you've got any comments or suggestions, then please add them below. But I look forward to showing you the resin pour in the next video.